I just love some of the things people are doing with their lives in terms of helping others, and I'm fascinated by the mindset and consciousness out there around holistic health. Today, I get to share with you an interview I had with Ashley Meyer in northern Wisconsin, and she's helped me as well. So I'm excited to bring this to you, and this is going to be the first interview of several, hopefully, that we get to do with Ashley. I will be bringing her back, but this is episode 1 with Ashley Meyer. Enjoy. Thanks for listening. If you like the candid discussion and are seeking the truth behind the mainstream narrative, then please subscribe and share. Not only am I grateful, but those who seek the truth and wish to empower themselves and their family's health, freedoms, and future will also be grateful. I'm here with Ashley Meyer of Rhinelander, Wisconsin. She is an entrepreneur and an awesome health and healer. She does some amazing things up there, and she started a business years ago, which I'm not going to share anymore. I want to let her share her story and how she came about where she is, what she's doing, and why I think this is going to be of help for many of you. So, Ashley, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. And I'm Ashley Meyer from Organique Clinic. And we have moved a couple times due to a few expansions. And actually now we're in Tomahawk, Wisconsin. And the foundation of everything that we do at Organique is the nutrition response testing program, which is an area that I happened upon a little more than 10 years ago. And I was interested and I was inspired and passionate about it, but I had no idea what an incredible future and career that I was accidentally stumbling upon. So it's just turned out now 10 years later, I look back and I'm just blown away by it. I'm so incredibly blessed to be doing what I'm doing. So
cool. Very cool. So tell us did you start with your own health challenges? How did you fall into, working with nutrition and then realizing the testing process and then how to better assess folks?
Yeah, actually, I would consider myself to have been a fairly or quite healthy person growing up. I would say that my parents, my mom especially, was kind of part of the crunchy movement before it was a thing or a trend. So I was always very interested in natural health and nutrition specifically, but it really didn't take form in my life until actually after I graduated from college. And I was working in the Twin Cities in my first career at that time. And I, really just started with a lot of pain, joint pain, especially knees, ankles. I was on my feet oftentimes 12 to 16 hours a day. And unfortunately, I don't want to say this in front of you of all people, in high heels. and so that just kind of began an escalation of, again, I can't say like chronic health problems, but just really unfortunate way to feel for being in my mid 20s. And I had always done chiropractic care my whole life. And so there was a rebirth of that. And then I began doing laser therapy on my joints, which I had a lot of success in that front. But once I first was evaluated by an NRT practitioner, that is when I was able to find out kind of the missing link, what was left over that was causing my chronic inflammation. And I just thought it was actually, to be completely honest with you, I thought it was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen in my life. I thought it was just total cuckoo, right. Weird voodoo, because I wasn't very familiar at the time with energy testing. But anyway, the results for me were phenomenal. And that was kind of the first benchmark in my brain of, wow, this is really amazing stuff. This is cool. But I didn't, it wasn't anything that was on my radar as a career yet until I started to realize the inevitable trajectory of the career that I was in, leading to like nothing short of chronic health problems. I was starting to see the handwriting on the wall with that, excuse me. And that is what actually opened me to considering a career change. And then truly all I can say is an opportunity dropped from the sky. And it was, I am a firm believer in prayer and intention. And, that is all I can say that happened is I kind of put it out there and boom, I got a job offer in the field. And at the time it seemed very scary because the learning curve was going to be tremendous. And I thankfully was in a situation in my life where I could kind of do the globetrotter thing and I could go wherever I needed to for the education. And I just said, what the heck? Let's do it. I have nothing to lose. And I've never looked back. Best decision of my life.
Fantastic. That's a cool story. And I like how you just, the process of trusting and, the faith of putting it out there, but not blind faith, just like understanding that this process will unfold as it is. And you just keep showing up. So I'd heard about you through my sister-in-law, of course, that part of the story, obviously. And I was going through a challenging time when I was just diagnosed, with cancer and had looked at some, like, where did this sneak up and, toxify my body? And so Ashley was, she was very capable in terms of testing a couple areas. Environmentally is one of your strengths. So in testing environmental toxicity and environmental sources of toxins, which from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but you found a little niche in that realm that you're really good at. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
I would love to, because that definitely is the core of why I do what I do. So the NRT aspect, of course, that education was paramount to where I am today. And it was the foundation. But supplements, good diet, all of those things are so important. But what I ended up realizing was there would be a majority of cases that would heal beautifully. You unblock the nervous system, you handle the deficiencies, handle the toxicities, and they would just do beautifully in their progress, and it's what we would expect. Then there was a minority of cases that would consistently not heal, not get better, not show the improvement. And to me, that was just, it was a little bit, it stumped me. And I'm like, what is up with this anomaly group? And what am I missing? Like, there has to be something, because the body always heals no matter what. In my opinion, if you give it the right stuff and you get rid of the right stuff, it's like everybody heals. And there's not an exception to that. So what am I missing, really? And so what I started to do was hone in on those cases and just reflect and pay attention and be present. And also then obviously asking for guidance and letting kind of the intuition kick in. And what I started to realize, so one of the things within nutrition response testing that we can do is test for contaminants or anything that would be technically toxic to the human biofield for that person. And we can do so with incredible results and able to duplicate it over and over and over again. And so utilizing one of the specific types of testing, I started to take samples from each individual's environment and then pair that up with their biofield. And I was starting to see a really consistent issue, which was this person is not okay. in their own place. So obviously within the natural health realm, we're all used to hearing the buzzwords, and, some of the classic lines you'll hear would be like, okay, handle the root cause. And when the root cause is within the body, they're going to heal. But what I started to find out and realize is within this group that isn't healing, the root cause, everything that's testing within their system is actually coming from outside of their body. And I'm not saying that's the case across the board for everybody, but thankfully within, my realm of what I was doing, I was able to pinpoint almost 100% of those cases. There was something coming from the outside that actually was the predominant root cause. I'll say that because, of course, every case is extremely complex and there are a lot of variables. And rarely would it ever be one thing or one problem. It will always be multiple things that together cumulatively there's a toxic burden that is just too much for the system. And along with that is, of course, emotional and spiritual as well. But I won't talk about that today, even though I would love to. So I started to notice that. And then that is where I poured my time into was, okay, whoever isn't getting well here, please send me every sample you possibly can from your home, from your workplace, your water, your air, your bedding, wherever you spend all your time sitting in your recliner, the lights that you're spending time under. Like, I don't care what it is, but send it in because I have got to figure out what's going on here. Then I started to compare different toxicities with like what was, for instance, testing in this person's air, and then comparing it with what was testing in their body. And I would start to see that levels were not decreasing on certain contaminants, like let's just say heavy metal mercury. I would notice, okay, the mercury level isn't dropping, but their arsenic level is dropping. Great. Their aluminum is dropping. Great. Okay, so there's mercury here, plus. And then I started doing research. Okay, so what would this, combination of toxins, what would that actually be? And then from there, I began to special order different testers to find out, okay, well, what is this? What is this, a gas, or is this, what is this coming from?
Right.
So that is where I started to kind of put things together, kind of piece the pieces of the puzzle together. And then I decided that I needed to do a little more education in the field of environmental medicine, just because that's where they're talking about, some of these weird things that we're not used to hearing about. Like, we are all used to hearing about toxicity in vaccinations, or toxicity from amalgam fillings, or, GMOs and all of that. Like, that's all kind of the all day, everyday thing that we're all used to dealing with. So I was looking for what stones are not being overturned and what are the other things that could be hitting us daily that we might not be aware of. And then from there, just to put one final piece of the puzzle together, that is when I started to kind of, categorize and find out, what am I seeing is testing consistently as a major issue for most people's biofields. And it's not something they would usually be looking for or hear about. But then also taking that a step further to find out what are the deficiencies associated with these toxicities. And sure enough, then I started to find, oh my gosh, this is what this person is consistently really deficient in. And even if we supplement it, at the end of the day, they're not actually really responding. And turns out it's because they were re-ingesting that toxicity from, outside of their system and taking it in. And that seemed to be the difference between being able to handle a toxicity or being able to handle a deficiency or not, and therefore handling the case or not.
Got it. I love it too. That's a great explanation. So for folks that kind of don't see where this actually exists, when you mention their lazy boy, their furniture they sit on, the environment, let's just talk something really simple, super simple, that just totally doesn't hit people's radar. Off gases from sewage. For example, you have a 10-year-old house, let's just say 10-year-old house, which is pretty darn new, versus a 30 or 40-year-old house. But a 10-year-old house has a wax seal that is under the pedestal of the toilet, that literally, of the commode, that literally is a sealant from off gases. I talked to several construction workers, home builders specifically, and asked about how long do you realize to them when we went through this, Ashley, was how long do these seals last? They said, I don't know. They said, as far as we know, I don't know if there's a lifespan. I said, well, actually read the label. And this was to Ashley's credit. She pointed this out and she found some things. And that is when we tested the environmental gases within our home and realized that there was some off gases as a result of living in a 25-year-old home at the time, 26 now. And these seals are only guaranteed for 6 to 8 years max. And so literally we changed that. We found a way, and Ashley helped us coordinate how to test it, number one, and then find out where the leaks were. We found the leaks, and to the amazement, I had my same home builder buddy help us because he was as fascinated about the question as ever and was really in disbelief that it was actually potentially a problem. And from that point, he got to see that and is like, wow, that's interesting. I mean, just kind of shocked that that even exists. And is it really that big a deal? So it was kind of taken back, but really like got it after that point. And I literally manually made those changes myself, changed all new seals and got it squared away. And it was pretty profound to just realize how can something so simple, and how many of other Wisconsinites, let alone Americans, people worldwide living in these situations that are breathing the air, whether it be molds, funguses, in molds, as you know, Ashley, specifically, you test for many different types. I'm sure that you realize there's so many types, and people buy a home and then there's mold in it and they don't see the mold. It's been painted over and they can't figure out why they got sick, or off gases from fresh carpeting and all the gases that come with, the formaldehyde that's in carpeting, which also, I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to put this out there because I haven't stated it in any podcast previously, but in episode 44, I believe it was, with Dr. Peter Slane, we talk about what viruses, the purpose of a virus. If you haven't listened to that, folks, check it out. And the reason is Dr. Peter helps shift a perspective on how viruses serve a purpose in our body to detoxify certain toxins, right? And you're not taught...
Absolutely.
And you agree with that. And you're not taught that as...
Yes.
And so we think, oh, I have to avoid this at all costs because that's the theme, versus what if I allowed that thing in there and it just got rid of? In this case, from what we understand, the possibility is, and I'm not here giving you all medical advice, I'm asking the question so you can ask the question yourself, is that Ashley is accurate here with this. And I love it. I love the conversation. But if that virus is coded for formaldehyde, which you say, where does that come from? Ashley, you want to tell them where formaldehyde comes from?
Oh, man. What doesn't it come from, right? We're all familiar with, the classic places like diet soda, aspartame and ingestion of fake sweeteners and things like that. But formaldehyde is in sewer gas, for one thing. It's in a lot of new construction. It's in stains. It's in paints. It's just that kind of classic smell. If you walk into a new building, how do you know it's new? It's that smell. That's formaldehyde, and it's usually in carpeting, fire retardants, in mattresses, and in new chairs, in couches. Literally. I find formaldehyde testing in almost everything. A lot of toxic dental, if you're not with a biological dentist, of course, and some of the dental materials that they use. And it is absolutely all over the place in pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, glyphosate, all of that as well. So whether that is airborne, which is what I see all day, every day for the next 5 months around here, or whether it is, in a food source. And we don't have to go into this at all, but what I sadly find is so much of the food that we think is organic is not truly organic. And it isn't their fault necessarily. It's more the overspray, and it's in the groundwater. And so even if the farmer is doing everything correctly, we still find that a lot of the food sources are contaminated. But again, formaldehyde is one of the classic things I just see all over the place all the time. So, and I see a lot of correlations with migraine headaches and aura migraines and things of that nature, a lot of brain-related conditions. But by the way, also water, groundwater, well water, if you're in an area that has a lot of glyphosate overspray and so forth too. So,
yeah, that's huge. I appreciate you sharing where you see that in folks too. And I'm sure you get this all the time. People are, looking for a simple answer. Hey, Ashley, what can I take? Hey, Dr. Wade, what should I be taking vitamin wise? And if I don't test them, I am not helping them, because it's a very individual thing. And we look at it that we don't blanket a recommendation onto folks and just say, yes. I mean, there's basic things you can benefit from: vitamin C, vitamin D3, blah, blah, blah. But in the ratios and proportions that you need, or even the type with methylation that you need, is truly essential. What's the most cost-effective, most affordable, and portable way to get into infrared sauna technology? Therasage360.com. Use code FSDW360 for your discount today. Delivering results that last. So I want you to talk about what you obviously, I opened a can when you started talking about your environmental stuff. That was great. You just went into it. Mm-hmm. What else do you want to share that you see as patterns, like with folks that you touched on something with organic food? I had a patient recently just tell me, Doc, how do people afford? How can people afford to buy organic food? What's your take on that question? Because I see, obviously that's true. It's a little more expensive. It is more expensive, but where is that? What's your take on the value of food versus where that's going to put them in their healthcare? And then now knowing that even our organic food has gotten toxicities in it.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the deal, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but it's like, well, how can you afford to be sick? I mean, and while saying that, I definitely get that, and I totally respect that it is not inexpensive to eat well sometimes, but at the same time, there are certain places that people can shop, and they will be really surprised that their bill doesn't come out to be a whole lot more expensive when they're eating really nutrient-dense foods. I'll put it out there right now. One of my favorite places is actually Aldi, because of their standards. They kind of, not across the board, but in their organic lines, they kind of are respectful of the European standards, which are way higher than those in the United States. And what I find is there are a lot of foods there that are actually pure, and they might be a fraction of the price as what you may see at somewhere like Whole Foods. Now, I apologize if I'm not supposed to actually be mentioning brand names or stores.
You're good.
But it's like, it does not have to break the bank. I have a lot of clients that would not be considered, they're not wealthy necessarily, but it really comes down to the priority. The other thing I'll say is a lot of the new clients that I see coming in here, they come in with a suitcase load of supplements. I mean, they have been everywhere and done everything, tried everything. And they usually have a ridiculous inventory of supplements, half or more than half of which are not pure. And they've already spent all the money on it. And that's why one of the biggest things that I advocate is, let's clean up your food sourcing. Let's clean up your environment first, because you're going to find you need a fraction of the supplements that you used to in the past just to function and to feel well. But more importantly, if you're taking a supplement, at the very least, make sure that it is pure, because you might think you're taking this fantastic liposomal vitamin C, And then we find out there's mercury in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, how does that happen? I don't have enough time for that. But the point is, if you're taking mercury daily, you're not receiving the benefits that you might think that you are. And that gets really spendy. So if you're able to, again, filter the toxicities that are causing the deficiencies first, then you find that you don't have to take nearly as many supplements to be well and to function well. So that, again, sorry, I take it right back to environmental, but that is the way that I see it. So, and the other thing I want to mention then from a nutritional standpoint is I usually find that a lot of people are taking kind of the same thing over and over and over for weeks or months at a time. And when the body is correctly absorbing and assimilating, typically unless it's, an herbal or something that's kind of for long-term chronic healing, usually the system should be shifting and changing, and you should be able to verify that, the nutrients are going in and it should correct the deficiency. And then the next step might be a cofactor deficiency. So you're kind of shifting to a different supplement to handle the, kind of what's later on the assembly line. But rarely do I find that somebody needs to consistently supplement the exact same thing long-term. And if they do, again, usually we're missing something in the environment if that happens.
That's a good hit. That's a great hit on multiple levels. And I would agree. There's no apology necessary in that. And it does come back to environmental. It comes back from recognizing that there's multiple sources. So absolutely, like it's going to be some environmental. It's probably going to be some spiritual and metaphysical. It's going to be some structural. And to find...
Well, and structural. Yeah, I was going to say we've left out structural because you're who you are, and that's kind of a given. But in the testing that I do, one of the primary categories I test for is a structural block to the nervous system. And if there is a subluxation that is, testing against the liver, it's like I could give this person supplements all day long every day. And at the end of the day, the liver is not going to get up to full functioning on its own if we don't handle those subluxations. So in that case, I'm not the person for the job, but I'm going to send them over, to the chiropractor and get that part handled because it's body, it's soul, it's spirit, it's physical, emotional, spiritual. And when it isn't something that is going to get fixed with supplements, which is how I see a subluxation or a primary dental root cause, or a scar blocking the nervous system, or environmental, food sourcing, whatever. It's like that you want to handle the problem from the true root cause, because the body will then, of course, the nervous system will unblock and it will get back to healing.
Yeah, it's powerful. And that's why, with respect, I also see that visceral somatic response as well as the somatovisceral, meaning the organ system, for those listening, triggers the organ system deficiency and or struggle or inflammation can trigger the spinal reflex and continue to throw that spinal level off. So to that point, it's a two-way street, which I recognize as well. So if I'm clearing subluxations, but they're not holding and stabilizing, I'm asking that next level question too, as to where does this organ area or this system or this tissue continue to refire and re-trigger this subluxation pattern. Now we're talking about the loop that needs to be corrected from multiple standpoints, and back to physical, back to the toxicity of the environment. If I continue to consume this thing that I think is good for me and I come back and I'm like in the same rut, we're going to have a deeper conversation. Where is this other thing? So asking the quality of the question, and that's what I find that you did, is like, okay, this body's a natural healer. That's our premise. It's intelligent. So, and then you just, okay, if it's not healing, wait, where am I missing something? And then you'd look deeper. So,
because you are like, you are then. Yeah. I want to add, can I add one more thing too?
Please.
Because I talk about, I'm really big on water, of course, and quality water and being pure and structured and all of that. But one thing that I also tend to see is in a case, especially let's say with a kidney or an adrenal case, where they might have pure water, whatever form they have chosen for purification, but pure water does not mean optimal for that person's biofield. depending on the mineral content, you could have a perfectly pure, beautiful water sample that for a certain person's kidneys, because of their genetic predisposition or their methylation and so forth, it might just be too high in, like, let's say iron, too high in iron for that person's kidneys, or too high in copper, or too high in tin, or too low in something that causes a consistent deficiency, just because of the cofactor deficiencies that result if you're getting too much of a certain mineral at a certain time. So that would be another example where I consider that to be an environmental issue, but we wouldn't usually flag it because your water is filtered. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Right.
like, well, it couldn't be the water because we've already handled that. It's like, well, what about the water though on your personal biofield? So that is, I'm really passionate about that, as well as like geopathic stress zones. Again, we're all familiar with the 5G conversation and the harmful effects of EMFs, but geopathic stress zones tend to be something that I, at least in my experience, tend to be missed. And the radiation levels, really coming from the earth, and how that can affect a person, especially, a thyroid or adrenal case. So those would be just additional things I wanted to throw in there, is kind of, a way to think that, we usually would think pure water is always good for you, or the earth is always good for you, but there can be an exception even to that. And the only key is just finding that out. And then there are ways to harmonize or fix or filter all of these things.
Yes, that's a great point. It's thinking we're doing something right, like buying organic this or that, and thinking it's just clean. So we rule that out when we don't take the individual into account as to what they're able to and not able to. And it could be as simple as taking a B vitamin and just, this is an easy example because there's many folks that take the synthetic Bs, as you know, and they buy them and they feel like, hey, I already got that. And I'm like, maybe that's part of your problem, but we don't know until we test. And that's what you do. You do that testing. So that's what's awesome. Tell people where they can find you, Ashley.
Okay. So our website is livingorganique.com. So organique is the French word for organic, and it's spelled just that way. And then on Facebook, we are Organique Clinic. And again, we're in Tomahawk, Wisconsin. I do have many programs that are via a distance as well, though. But our physical location is northern Wisconsin.
Okay, I just posted those two in the comments. So those... And I already corrected my mistake as from Rhinelander to Tomahawk. Organique Clinic, Facebook, also livingorganique.com. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're able to do, how you've helped my family up north as well. So thank you. And I think we're probably going to have
Thank you so much.
Some more conversations about maybe some of these other areas. We bring in some of the spiritual. We can bring in the next few weeks, I'm going to be posting and conversing on several notes about, I want you to tell people about your clinic though, and also what you do there. And we can talk about detoxification. We can talk about what we're doing for EMFs and how, as 5G comes in, I just found out I have some connections with folks that work for TDS down here. And they worked on a tower that's close to my office. And I asked them, I said, can you tell, is it live? And they said, no, it's supposed to be September. And then I said, can you tell us when it goes live, please? I want to know. It's close to our office. So it turns out, apparently it's live, and it went live a week ago or so. So we are 5G there. And I harmonize in my office. I harmonize on my body. I harmonize my home, but I don't know if many people are aware of that. So maybe you and I can continue this conversation at another point here upcoming, and given the time and your willingness, and we can talk about some of that too, and some strategies that you've done. And then how do people get right? How can they get help? And so reach out to Ashley. She'll help if she can. I appreciate you again. And thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wade, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You bet. We didn't even get a chance to talk about your new babes, your kids, your two little guys.
That's for some future episode on kids, but they're both happy, healthy, chunky, and sassy. So there's the update on my kids.
Well, and that could be a great conversation. I see a lot of kids in my office, and it's important. But as you go through this, seeing your little guys grow up and why healthy and chunky are good things, and why that brown fat is super good. So. Awesome. Well, thanks again so much. And thanks, folks, for watching. Share this if you know somebody who needs help. And you know where to find Ashley in Tomahawk, Wisconsin. So until next time, be well.
Okay, my fellow health warriors, it's time to head over to iTunes, franklyspeakingdrwade.com. There, you can rate, review, and subscribe, as well as share, so more of our brothers and sisters can grow to realize their voice and their health freedom. Speaking up means you matter, so get on it. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements or views expressed are not medical advice and are not meant to replace the advice of your medical doctor. This podcast, including Dr. Wade Anderson and his guests, disclaim responsibility for any adverse effects you may experience from the specific use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse and accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about the guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for such services or products. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products and services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical condition, consult your licensed physician.